Welcome to Moksa Workflow Manager Training movies. This is exercise number 3, recursive tasks. When you are trying to set up a workflow template, you will quickly notice that some of the tasks that need to be performed can reoccur, can be recursive. So if somebody provides a design, another participant has to approve. If that participant rejects, very often you want to send that rejection back to the designer to make the correction. This process can repeat itself an undefined number of times. So, to be able to use that in Workflow Manager, we created a task called template task. This is a task that calls another workflow. That by repeating that process, you can create recursive tasks. This movie will show you how. In a previous exercise, we created this workflow, and now we are going to modify it so that we can create recursion. We don't want from the commission task to the approval task just one approval, but we want to be able to have the rejected tasks, rejected files come back to the designer so that the designer can make his corrections. Let me show you how you can achieve that. The first thing we do is we are going to create a new template. So I'm saying new category. And I'm going to give that category a name. So I'm going to call it Training number 3 Recursive Tasks. In this training number 3, I'm going to create a new workflow. I'm starting with a user list. So I want, first of all, the design department to create a design for me. So I have now a design swim lane, a user list, and at this point I'm going to add a task. The first task is a commission task. For instance, create flyer. I can specify the instructions. In this case, I'm keeping it very simple. And as you saw me add from previous encounters, I'm going to add the workflow instructions to the template of the task, so that in this mail we get the workflow instructions. As you remember from previous examples, you need to select the target catalog in which you want to upload the files, and you can set a minimum or a maximum allowed of uploads. Creating the task. The next task is that I would like to approve this, but instead I know that this approval can happen several times. So instead of just putting here an approval task, I'm going to create a template task. Selecting a template task, and I'm going to call it approve flyer. Normally I would select here the template I want to execute, but at this point I haven't created that template, so I just click here on create. So this is now added to the task. I'm going to set the outlet of the uploaded files to the template task, and as we did in previous example, whatever comes out approved, we will create a collection called approved flyers. And I'm going to enable sites, download preview, and you see the site's base URL. You don't have to touch it. It's predefined in your preferences. I added that third task, and I'm going to set an outlet. There's only one outlet out of a template task, so here are the approved records coming back out of the template task. Of course, I made a little mistake. Our template task is not going to be executed by the design department, but at least one of the tasks in there will be performed by marketing. So I'm clicking here in the white area to get the new user list button, and I'm saying marketing is going to be used in this case, which means that my task needs to be moved to marketing. As you can see now, marketing has the template task. It's very important that if you use template tasks, that whatever roles, whatever swim lanes or user lists are used in the template task, that these user lists are available at the top level as well. In the worst case scenario, you can add a dummy user list with just a pipe task that I will explain a little later, here to the swim lane, so to be sure that this user is selectable in the portal. Only the users that are defined on this level will be selectable in the workflow portal. So now let's have a look at our template task. What do we want to do? As soon as we have a new design provided by the commission task from design, we want an approval task. So we can start a new workflow. Call it a new workflow, and usually as a naming convention I start template tasks with an underscore. And this is recursive approval. I go to my workflow, open the workflow graph, and in this workflow graph I'm going to select marketing. Marketing. The task I am asking from marketing to do is to perform an approval. So I'm saying approval task, approve flyer. I can set whatever text I want to add here. I'm just putting in the default. This is a single user approval. As I explained previously, you can either, if you have multiple users approving the same task simultaneously, you can set veto or majority, but if you have one user, you should set it to single user. We have in this case a dual toggle, not a drop down with 3 options, and you can force that comments are required in case of a rejection. You can set a minimum or a maximum allowed. You don't have to touch the workflow URL, only if it's different than your default, and you can set the text that will appear on your approve and reject selection. And again, you can add an additional email, admin email in this box. I create the task. So now I have my first task. If something is wrong, then I will want to send this back to a commission task to design. If it is right, I want to send this back to the level above, telling the workflow that it is finished with the template task. How do we do that? Very simple. I add to the swim lane a task called pipe task. You can give it a name. I call it return because it is returning back to the level above. And I connect my outlet. Whatever is approved can return out of this workflow. Very simple. The next thing is I want a new user list, and now I want my design department to perform the corrections on my design. So in the swim lane of design, I add a new task called commission task, and I call this correction flyer. I can give a full description of what I want, but please download and correct the asset. Upload the new version and additionally fill in the notes. Here I can say correction, and I could add again whatever text I want in my mail, but we're going to keep it simple in this example. I'm saying save, and now from marketing, new outlet, whatever is rejected goes to the commission task. If you want to zoom in to make it a little bit more readable, this is how you do that. If you only want the titles, then you can do it like this. The final thing I have to do is whatever is coming out of the correction has to go somewhere. That somewhere is of course back to an approval. So here in this task I'm going to call myself again. I say that I'm going to add, I'm going back to marketing, so logically it seems more logic to go back to the marketing swim lane, but in terms of calling that template task, it doesn't matter in which swim lane you put it. I'm selecting template task and I'm saying approve correction. And now I can select the task because it exists. I can select the workflow because it exists. You can see it in green because you can type it as well, and if you type it and it doesn't exist, it will show up in red. It's safer to select it so you cannot have any type mistakes. And what you can see now, what has happened is that from this task I can say whatever is uploaded is sent to this template task, and whatever comes back from this template task, if it is final, it should go to this pipe task. So as you can see, design wise this looks a little bit ugly, so it might be more useful to decide to put this task here, which makes it a little bit more nicer to look at and to understand. So if we go back to our initial workflow, in our initial workflow we still have to set, and we have, if the screen is a little bit off, you can always click on the refresh button here, and click in the gray area and click on refresh, and it will update the screen. You can zoom as well. And we should not forget in the template task that we still have to call that recursive task. So that's how you set up a recursive task. We now have two workflows actually. We have what we call a template task workflow, and we have the main workflow. The main workflow will start with a commission task asking somebody to create a flyer. This person then uploads a new design, and it goes to this template task. In this template task, the approver from marketing will get an approval task, and if he approves, it will go directly back to this level. If not, if he rejects, it will go to this commission task, which is a correction of the flyer. Whatever is uploaded will go back to a template task, and this template task will call this complete task again, which means that it will call this. Whatever is approved will go here, which means that the level above was this task, goes out, goes here, and goes back to this task. So that's how you create recursive tasks in Workflow Manager, going from a main flow and recursively calling the same template task. In the next movie, we will execute this workflow and give you a live example. Thank you for joining. Hope to see you in the next movie.